All right, good evening. Welcome to the March 20th, 2024 Abington Finance Committee meeting. We are wrapping up our recommendations on warrant articles in preparation for town meeting, which is a week and a half away. It is a week from Monday, April 1st. This is not an April Fool's joke. We're actually having town meeting on April Fool's Day. Please come 7 o'clock at the Abington Middle High School. As soon as we have people there, 150 people, we will get going and get through all of the agenda. Please come out and come early, come often. Anyway, our agenda for tonight is, let me go back to it, discussing the budget and where it stands overall. We've been working through this for months. We've been getting closer, but I think we're there tonight. We'll see. Review and vote on recommendations on warrant articles that we have not voted on yet. Review and vote on, review whether we want to take up any articles we have already voted on. Then reviewing and voting on available minutes. We do have one set of minutes. Liaison reports, correspondence. There's no correspondence. Discuss our next meeting, which will be an hour prior to town meeting on April 1st at the high school. We will not be meeting next week, no. So that is our agenda. Let's get right to it with the budget discussion. Town manager.
If you don't mind, before we go into the budget discussion, I know we asked Liz Shea to come in just to,
yeah.
I know you had some questions on
So,
MBTA.
when Liz was last here to talk to us, the MBTA zoning article, which, let's see what article number that is now.
What is it now?
I'm sure it'll change.
That is
16.
now Article 16. At the time, we were waiting, you had said that you were waiting on final wording and the wording was gonna change, so we didn't take a vote on it. And so we wanted to talk to
All
you
right,
about what the final
so
wording.
you'll have the final wording in the warrant. Last Monday, the planning board met and agreed to, I'm gonna spare you the administrative sort of malarkey that has gone on through all this, but we had to advertise the whole bylaw. So when you're looking at my budget and I need a little more in advertising, it's because to run it twice was $3,000. I hope to God we never have to do anything like that again. But that was the advice of council, because it's a multi-family unit bylaw. So she suggested, to be on the safe side, we run the whole thing. So we did that, and it was $3,000. So anyway, but part of that was the board didn't continue the hearing to a date certain, so I had to re-advertise, only $289 this time, so they could continue it till the night before, well, the night of town meeting to vote, and to vote all of these changes that they wanted to make. These changes actually came from the Attorney General, who has reviewed it, and from Town Council, who reviewed it, and Attorney Riley / moderator, who had some questions, and the board voted to incorporate his suggestions into the bylaw. Briefly, we needed to add a section about the Watershed Protection District because that was not included in our original language. They voted to eliminate a section that had some language about a 3.5-foot fence, and then you could make it higher or lower, and they just went with a 6-foot fence, period. I mean, it was really not stuff that changed the intent of the bylaw, or really the meat of the bylaw. The only thing that did change was the frontage. Originally, it was in there as 75 feet, and our consultant called Monday afternoon and said that the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which is now the new DHCD, which was the Department of Housing and Community Development, is now looking at the frontage of the lots in these communities that need to adopt this zoning. She's working with a lot of other people. It was like 7 communities maybe that had a deadline of December 31st. And then there's a whole wave going through that need to be done by this December of '24. So anyway, that change, she said it was 35 feet, so I went down to the assessor's office, who was so fabulously cooperative, and we looked at all the lots, and the lowest frontage we had was 38 feet, so we dropped the frontage to 35 feet. The intent of this bylaw is to allow multifamily housing by right and not put obstructions in the way of that, period. We aren't supposed to require them to file for special permits. I mean, there's a little special permit included in there, and the other thing we're doing is we're including 10% affordable housing for a multitude of reasons, but the big one is so we can keep pace with our numbers. Because for every 10 units that are built in town, we have to create an affordable housing unit so our numbers stay the same or go up. We have 2 projects, as I'm sure you know, that have been permitted but not built. So our numbers still say we're well below the 10%, and we're probably not, but there's nothing we can do until they pull a building permit. So anyway, that's sort of where we are now. They will vote and affirm all of those changes we made. But the article that will be in the warrant is complete, which is why we met Monday to do that, so we wouldn't have to try to amend a lot of stuff on town meeting floor, because it's complicated enough, it's controversial enough, and I don't want to get into having to say, explain the 35-foot, you know what I mean? There was so much in there that people may not understand if they're not familiar with zoning, or if they've never heard of this. It could be problematic. So when you get your copy of the warrant, that version will be the correct version. That's one we're moving forward with. And I would like to remind everybody, every time I get a chance I say this, this is not a housing production mandate. We are literally drawing a zoning district and allowing multifamily housing by right. The state says we have the capacity to build 1,022 units, but we are not required to, and we're not required to provide any infrastructure. We don't have to build roads, we don't have to give them water, we don't have to give them sewer. I mean, anything, we obviously have a water problem right now. These people don't float to the top of the list. A 40B is a different situation. They go to the top of the list for water, sewer, other infrastructure needs. This does not whatsoever. It's like a regular developer coming in. The only thing they're getting is the multifamily unit by right. We actually have a district there now. It's called the Transit-Oriented District. And it's a mixed use of commercial on the bottom and multifamily on top. So somebody could come in and use either one of those districts should this get approved at town meeting and approved by the Attorney General's office. So.
And this is something we're required.
Required by the state. I think everybody knows about Milton. Milton, for some people, have become a cheerleader. I heard yesterday on, we've been doing a lot of cohort meetings, webinar meetings about all of this prior to town meetings. And yesterday I found out that the Attorney General has filed to have a special master do the zoning for Milton.
Because they're losing grants and things, right?
Oh, they've lost their grants.
They've lost their grants.
But they haven't moved forward. They're still sort of fighting amongst themselves, and they haven't resolved their issue. So now, not only has all their grant money been taken away, but a special master is going to go in and decide where the district's going to go and decide how that district,
And
what
they
it's
don't
going to
get
look
it.
like.
They won't
So
get
they
the-
don't get to draw their own
They
district.
don't, no local control. Right now, we're going to have all local control. If we adopt this, it's our consultant has done the zoning. Like I said, town council, the Attorney General, anybody who wanted a chance to read it has been able to read it. And we still have local control. We've been able to change things, right? If we don't adopt it, but it's not even an empty threat. It's a reality now.
Right.
Because that's exactly what's happening in Milton. I think everybody saw they had $100,000 taken right away for their seawall stuff.
And what types of grants do they use?
So I actually have that list. For us, we got $2.2 million in a MassWorks grant in the water treatment money, partly for Myers Ave. We received $95,000 in the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant, which we're working through right now. We got grant awards through Complete Streets Program. We got $5 million through the Clean Water Trust. We got $60,000 to design that trail out back. $200,000 from Green Communities to install heat pumps at the senior center. And $30,000 for the design to repair and restore the Memorial Bridge at Island Grove.
And they can take
literally-
that back.
Yeah, whatever we haven't already claimed, like some of this stuff has been done, but some of it has not, and they will not pay us. I mean, we're halfway through the MVP 2.0 grant, and I haven't asked them for any money yet, and that they just wouldn't pay us.
And that's
And-
actually just
and-
an average year, too.
And
Right.
it also, correct me if I'm wrong, it would prevent us from getting other grants.
Oh, we're
that
off
we-
the- we're
that
off the
we would
list.
be applying for.
Not only do they claw the money back,
So-
we are not eligible. That's actually, I have to say, for the past, I want to say, close to 12 months now, it's one of the first questions you answer on a grant application. Are you complying with MBTA communities? And we have been. It hasn't been a terrible lift to keep us compliant. It's filling out some paperwork once a year. But-
So, not really a simple question, but kind of trying to cut to the heart of it. Are there any negative, that you can think of, negative financial implications to the town for drawing this zoning? Because I'm struggling to think of any myself, so I want to.
Right, well, I mean, obviously,
Thoughts on
if we
it.
don't do it, we know what some of the ramifications are.
Right, I'm saying if we do it,
So, I don't know if
What
you
would
saw,
negative
I gave
impacts be?
everybody a map tonight of
Yep.
the parcels that the planning board picked. Quite frankly, most of them either have a building on it or a building has been permitted. So, I'm not sure we're looking at a lot of new growth. I mean, that 1015 Plymouth Street or 0 Summer Street could come back. I am fairly sure they won't, because they've already invested so much money in their plans to get it through a 40B. I honest to God, and I think they actually have more units than they could get through this zoning. I mean, obviously, if something gets built, it will mean more people in town. And it's by right multi-family, so that may mean more kids in school. And again, throughout all these programs we've attended, the mantra has been, it really does not mean more children in schools. They're saying if you build 2 bedrooms, it doesn't mean there's 10 kids in the school, or 2 kids in the school from that.
Well, it's already a multifamily district.
Right.
So they,
Yeah.
that could be there anyways.
Exactly.
Regardless of-
They could have a dry cleaner and a Mary Lou's on the bottom, and then up top have multi-unit dwellings. They could have gone in and done that already.
So if we already have it, why are we, maybe I missed it, why are we switching it to?
So the district we have in place right now,
Yeah.
the transit-oriented district, does not allow multi-unit families by right. It's, if you want the whole building to be multi-unit family, you have to get a special permit from the planning board. Right now, it requires you to do a mix. So you can have your multi-families up top, and you have to have commercial uses on the bottom.
And what's wrong with that?
Nothing, that's what our current zoning calls for. This
Yeah.
overlay district that the Commonwealth is requiring us to adopt
Yep,
is multifamily by right, period.
gets rid
So-
of the commercial at the bottom.
Right.
Okay.
And it gets rid
Right.
of the need for.
Gets rid of the
going through a
requirement.
special
Right,
permit.
or a special permit, no special permits. I have to be honest
you
with
do
you,
still have to get permitted.
they have to get, and so let me
Just
be
to make sure
very,
that's
very,
clear
very
for
clear
everyone
about
watching.
they may
They
not
do
have to
still
apply
have
it
to
for
get
special
permitted.
permits,
Yeah.
but they have to abide by all our conservation laws, by DEP, all of that stuff still stays in place. And again, any of our infrastructure, water, sewer, they're just like anybody else walking in the door to get whatever capacity we might have. So it's really just to allow the multifamily. So yeah, I guess at the end of the day, we might get a few more kids in school. That might happen anyway. And, you know, now, like, I've been way too immersed in all of this, and they talk about that cycle of housing and how maybe it's not a bad thing to have kids going through the school system, you know what I mean? Because it keeps that school population at a certain rate, and then you're not losing teachers and funding and stuff like that, so.
It's your Chapter 70 money.
Right.
Just one question.
This year isn't a good thing.
Scott
but-
said something. Just in general, I don't need specifics
Mm-hmm.
about the grants. in general, about what's the average of the grants that we get from the state a year that would be at risk over the last 5 years, if you've got an idea?
So that I don't know over the last 5 years.
Or
I,
the last 2 years,
2,
whatever you
3.
got. I
So
don't
like,
need-
let's say last year, we got 100,000. Let's round it to 100. I got 200. And that's just me. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about the 5 million the water department
Right, no,
got.
that's,
Right?
that's, I want a total number.
Right, so it
Nice and
was
easy to understand for
5,
everybody.
6, 7, 7, 8, 9, so 7 point, let's say 7.3
Um,
in the last couple of years
Yeah,
that I quickly add up here.
okay.
Um,
I think that, to me, that's easier for
It's an
me to
easy-
understand than
Right.
Yeah.
all those details that you gave. Even though it's great that you have the details, and maybe that's what you need. I'm
Right,
not a town meeting expert, but in my mind, 7.3 says all I need to hear.
it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money and
Yeah.
in my head, and I don't know how other people think of this. I think you said the last time I was here, that's great, but it also costs us some money sometimes
Yes.
to have these, like a matching amount
Right,
or in-kind amount, and you're absolutely right. But sometimes the money becomes the impetus to get projects done,
DPW.
right?
That doesn't include DPW.
No,
DPW was 12 million over the last 5 years, I think.
right,
Oh,
right. So that, I think that was the Complete Streets, and he didn't have a number when I asked him about that. So it's all of that, and then the downside, obviously, is not only would they claw back what they've given us, our legal fees might increase a little bit,
yeah, okay.
right?
So our deadline is December 31st,
Yes.
and then there's other communities that are the following year?
Very small, the big wave is this year.
Okay.
The small town adjacent communities are 2025,
So
which
why
is,
was-
again, another little handful. So there was a handful of the rapid transit, and then the handful of the small town
Okay.
adjacents at the end. And the big ones, which is rail adjacent and commuter rail, is all this year.
So that's why Milton was this year, because they're rapid transit?
Actually,
okay.
Milton was a rapid transit, and they
Okay.
were due December. They approved it at a December town meeting, and then a coalition came together for a redo, so to speak. They had like a recall and revoted it and voted it down.
Gotcha, so they were in compliance until that?
They were, yeah, in compliance for about a month.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Other questions for Liz?
So I know you guys normally don't take votes on zoning articles, but if we could kind of count on your support.
Well, I feel like this
Yeah.
is definitely a zoning article that has
It has a
It does have a
far-reaching
lot of-
financial implications
Yeah.
as far as what, ending up in a situation like Milton.
Yeah, so I think that's a
That's my 2
good
cents.
question for the board, is we typically defer to the planning board for this type of an article, but this type of an article doesn't typically have you will not receive $7.2 million in grant money if you don't do this, kind of an impact to it. So I would entertain a motion either way, whether it's to defer to the planning board or to make a recommendation one way or the other on this.
Is a compromise a deferral with prejudice? Does that exist?
Oh, I've never heard that.
No? I thought we
Scott.
did that before.
I think we could do that, right? Defer to the planning board with an affirmative.
Sort of that we agree, but we don't, but it's not our,
The law only requires that the planning board make a recommendation,
At town
so they
meeting.
typically make the motion.
yeah, okay.
You can offer whatever opinion you'd like to.
If it was, like, for instance, if we took a sense of the meeting, no?
No, I
If
don't
we
think that would be,
took a.
that wouldn't come.
we-
Your
the-
meeting, you mean?
Well, I was, if we were able to say the finance committee supports this, or the finance committee does not support this,
I
depending
think
on
you
how
can
the-
say
Would that be-
we defer to the planning board, because the moderator is gonna call on you,
So
and then you can
Would
say
that
defer
be
to the planning
something that I
board.
would
But we would
say-
like to,
at town meeting, in presenting the article, would that be something that I would say in deferring to the planning board, but signaling our support as well if
Yes, there's nothing to prevent you, if the board so chose, you could, when I read the article, and then give you the floor, you could say, planning board did take a vote on this article, and we voted in X way,
Yep.
but we will defer to the planning board to make the motion. You do it just like that.
He meant finance committee
Yes,
did
I
take a
know.
vote.
I knew what he meant.
So thank you, I would appreciate your support, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. If you get into the gobbledygook later on, you're like, well, what does that mean? Happy to answer any questions I possibly can.
No, Liz, we thank you very
Yep.
much for your
Thank
time.
All right,
Thank you.
see you at town meeting.
See you there. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Motion, I'm not really sure what the motion needs to be, because it would be recommending approval, although I feel like it's not, yeah.
We
I
could.
motion to recommend approval of Article 16.
Is that what it is now? Yeah, 16.
You identify by name. 'cause the-
Yes,
The
sorry.
zone-
New article.
The new Article 16, which is zoning enact multifamily overlay district, MBTA.
Exactly.
So there's a motion, Marty with the second. Any-
What was the motion?
Any, to recommend approval. We will certainly have the planning board have their say as well, if this passes, but any further discussion?
Just so I'm clear, we don't really have that much of a say in this, right? Like, we basically have to, our hands forced, we have to do this, and if we don't, we lose a ton of money on the back end.
Right.
So there really is no,
So
like,
we
do we
do-
wanna do it as a town,
We do have a say, as we just discussed. Milton had their say,
Right.
and they chose not to. And so what they essentially chose is the state is doing it for them instead of them doing it themselves.
That's what I
And
mean, like,
And they have a negative financial impact while they're not doing it themselves.
and all of the things in there
So
are
it's
what we have to
technically,
do. We have to
technically
do the
we have a
35
say.
thing. We have to do-
However,
Yeah, we've put in what the requirements, the state's basically saying, this is what you have to do,
Yep,
and you can pick where you wanna do it, and these are the minimum standards, and then we put in the rest of our stuff.
so that's what I mean, we couldn't say we want 50 feet of frontage, or for whatever
Well,
reason,
have-
if you guys know it's better or not.
You can
Correct.
designate your frontage,
Yeah.
however,
we
you
have to
look at the
designate it
district and you
within
have to
what
be
the,
reasonable.
and we have to do it within what the state's boundaries are.
Yeah, I think, well, it will have to approve the muster of the Attorney General. That was one of the things that came up when they looked at our district, what was our minimum size requirement for frontage, and then what was the actual lot sizes that we had picked.
Because it gives the
should
appearance of you
jive.
trying to block them if
Right.
if you make two,
You can't-
if you,
you don't want to create a district that's full of parcels that,
And this is
Can't
only,
comply.
only for this district, it doesn't change any other thing we have.
Correct, and it's just to be clear on it for anyone who's watching at home as well, it is an overlay district, which means it sits on top of other districts that are already zoned. It's not its own separate district.
And anything going there still has to go through
Correct,
a proper approval vetting system
yes.
with one substantial difference where they don't have to go for special permit for multifamily. That's it.
Correct.
That's essentially and it's far-reaching financial implications
Yep.
if voted in the negative.
Right. And potential future mild financial implications if voted in the positive. Very potential, though, as Liz pointed out.
yeah. And you can see in this, the site development standards that are in here, they go into a lot of the things that would have been typically a requirement of that special permit
Anyway.
anyways. So they're not, they are getting probably, better density out of the deal, but they still have to follow our rules of, especially when it comes to stormwater regs and conservation regs, and we're strict on the, we have setback regulations and things like that.
Site plan review, still have to do that.
Yeah, for stormwater. So there are things that you still have to go through. Parking.
To allay some
Bike,
concerns, right?
places
It's
to
not
put
like
your
we
bikes.
approve this and a building goes up 6 weeks later. That's not how it happens.
No.
Town moderator, I think, has something to share.
Yeah, just to add to your points, like any other zoning bylaw and general bylaw that gets passed at a town meeting, it has to be reviewed and approved by the Attorney General. This procedure, I've learned a lot through Liz, they've been doing a heck of a job here in the planning office, has already been reviewed, like she mentioned, by the Attorney General, so kind of get a good feeling that what we've drafted, what the town's drafted, looks like it probably will be approved if this is voted in. To your point, you can't just say, okay, we'll allow the multifamily with no special permit, but you have to have 10 acres of land and da-da-da-da-da, make it otherwise impossible. So they have these kind of guidelines that you have to have lower minimums, whatever. One of the maximums that's in this bylaw, that I don't think Liz mentioned, is that you can't be more than 3 stories, which I think a lot of people have envisioned that this could allow people to build 10-story towers. It's not allowed under the bylaw.
Good point.
And it's to what Matt just said, it only applies in this oblong area that's shown on the map. And I would encourage, like most people do when they go to town meeting, they do their homework before town meeting. If you go on the town website to the planning board's page, you can see the map where this applies. But more importantly, there is a 1-hour video, and the hour goes by pretty quickly, where we take the show at cable TV. I moderated it, but the people talking were Liz, the town planner, Rick Collins, who's been on the planning board for 10 years, and Judy Barrett, which was the consultant for the town that was hired to help write this. And I think they have a lot of information to explain what it is, but more importantly, what it's not. And I think if you watch that video, I think you have a greater understanding. And then you make your decision to support it or not, but that's a lot of information in that hour. Right there, that's what's shown on the screen right now. Click on that and you can watch the show. So, and one other thing, just so this committee's aware, and the town people in general, zoning bylaws typically require a 2/3 vote for approval. There are 3 zoning bylaw amendments on the agenda. 2 of them are regarding FEMA flood maps. We're basically amending our current bylaw to reflect recent amendments or updates by FEMA. Those 2 articles require 2/3 votes because they're changes to the zoning bylaw, updating the information. This bylaw requires a majority vote. That was part of the state law, that if you're to allow multifamily without special permits, only requires a majority vote approval at town meeting. And we did ask town council to confirm that, and she did today.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Say in my experience, it has been rare that has mattered, but it's a very good point. Other questions about the motion to recommend the zoning to enact multifamily overlay district MBTA article, which is currently Article 60? Without any further discussion, all those in favor of recommending the article?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstaining? It is recommended. All right, with that done, Scott, tell us about the budget.
All right, so even though the latest budget sheets that I've given you, one is a cut tracker that we've been using as the deficit has been growing and shrinking. The other is just, the basic budget summary that you're all used to seeing. Right now, they do still show a deficit of 689 plus, but that is only because we just haven't updated it yet. We are pretty confident that several things that we are planning to do will reduce that and balance it. The vote came in today. They did vote on our health insurance, so we do expect to have a solid number on that. So between that and some plan changes that we'll implement in July 1, we expect to have some savings. On health insurance, we do have 3 vacant positions over in the police department, that 2 of which will probably come off. Even though we took positions away last year, we'll probably take 2 more out this year. And The school committee, although I don't want to talk for the school department, they have suggested in our meetings that they had asked for a kindergarten and a sixth grade teacher, that they would be able to find that funding through other means and methods within their own budget. So we do expect, all in all, between those, to get pretty close to that $700,000 with maybe a small use of free cash to balance it. So we are essentially there. I think we can probably, unfortunately, one thing we haven't gotten back, and both Andrew and I did speak with our representative out at the DLS, Martin, trying to impress upon him the importance of getting our free cash number, but he has not finished it yet. We both talked to him this week. We do expect to have it, certainly by the morning of town meeting, but if we do get it in the meantime, we'll update everything accordingly and send it to you via email. Again, like I said, the budget will be balanced. I think the things that we've discussed using free cash for, we'll be okay using the free cash for. If anything, and if the number isn't favorable, I think the one place that you're gonna see you making a recommendation on cutting some free cash spending would be the $750,000 for road work improvements. We'd probably reduce that accordingly, which is part of the capital plan. But other than that, again, I'm fairly confident that we're finally in a good position. Again, we did use, we are using some one-time revenue for this. We're reducing our health insurance not only by the plan change and by some savings, but also, and they're not really savings, it's just not as much as an increase as we had expected. But we're also having using that healthcare trust fund to offset, it's a one-time offset of that line item. So, Andrew, unless I'm missing anything, I think that sums it up.
So when we're having a hard enough time dealing with the year that we're doing, but when you look ahead to the following year, we'll have bigger gaps to fill because we're using the one-time. Do you think that
we will?
Things will?
I think that the health insurance, working on that and savings on that, those will be obviously realized going forward. And there are other options there that I think we can plan for, we'd want to work a little bit closer with the employees on other options and maybe introduce another plan that, would probably save the employee money as well as the town if they're willing to take it. But, then there's also the plan to try and do something with our trash and take that out of the budget that will certainly help. I'm a little more bullish, I guess, on the revenue for coming up. I do see the other marijuana shops being open, and I do see a lot of probably better new growth than we've seen in a couple of years will show up next year. But that being said, anything can happen after the election, so.
Right.
But yeah, I think, we know that that we're going to want to replace eventually positions on the police department. We don't want to.
We don't want to leave those empty.
No, we did leave them enough positions. There is a vacant lieutenant position, a vacant sergeant position. Those folks would hopefully move up from within, and there's also, we're leaving one empty patrol position that they'd be able to fill. We actually won't be out of civil service pending next year's election, town election anyway, so putting stuff like that off isn't necessarily a bad thing for the overall plan over there.
Is it like last year that those positions, even if we left them in the budget, there's a good chance they wouldn't be filled anyway?
In my opinion, yeah.
Yeah.
So, or if they were, I think we would probably be at a disadvantage of where we would be on the list of candidates and stuff. I think I think the chief's in a good position now. I won't, he may not fully agree, but,
Yeah.
like I said, we did leave them some positions to fill. And, you know, I do know, you know, we have Holbrook Dispatch coming in higher this year and then higher again next year. That's the final year of the contract, so we're in a position to renegotiate for the following year, and we'll see what happens with that. I doubt if there'll be any great reduction, but typically they're on new grant cycles, which may help
Decrease.
offset some of the cost.
Yep.
They may be able to bring in another town or two, which would also help offset the cost, so.
I know they have definitely continued bringing in other communities.
Yeah, they've grown, so that's, yeah, I mean, it's, like I said, I kind of, I'm a little more optimistic about revenue in the future years, and certainly growth, but, you know, a lot hinges on what happens in November too, who knows?
So on the health insurance, the 500,000, that's a one-time, that's the
Using that
premium
trust fund.
holiday?
Yeah,
And then what's the second, the ARPA for the 640 or so?
Yeah, so we'll be using ARPA revenue replacement to help pay for health insurance in the next fiscal year.
Okay,
And how much is that?
640.
640K.
so that's 1.1 million or so that were
We'll have to-
one-time just for health insurance?
Yep.
So we're gonna have to cover that next year in some way?
Or cut benefits.
Yeah, that's, the other part is making it up, trying to make it up with different plans, or, you know, one thing that we looked at this year that we'll implement in July is just, you know, just a changing in the structures of co-pays, and not even increasing them dramatically, but small increases actually save us up to a little over 3%, which is a, you know, a big number on that line item.
What about the GIC? Any benefits in that? Isn't that a much bigger
We
pool?
looked at it.
I did some cursory research on it. There's not much savings there.
Mm.
Is there any thought of using a alternative of a high deductible plan with a?
Yeah, that's
with
actually what we
a
want to offer.
Incentive of a contribution to their
Yeah.
HSA?
Yeah, and Andrew and I started talking
Okay.
about that, and he's actually got a plan for that next.
Okay,
yeah.
good,
Well, I'm talking with the consultants,
yeah.
so.
Yeah, that's, I mean, it's a great idea, and that probably will bring in
That's a
some
lot of
serious
savings.
savings, yeah.
What about with the IT assistant? That's
Because-
something that we scrapped, obviously, but isn't finding somebody to replace Wayne a priority?
Well, let's not count Wayne out yet.
No, I understand that, I'm not, you know.
Please.
Yeah, you know what, there's a lot of things that were priorities this year.
Yeah.
You know, that's something that you folks have discussed and have put forward quite a bit. But, you know, weighing that out against, you know, we also had priorities at the school level that were very important. You know, English as a second language over there is huge, and it's growing. And then the police department priorities and the DPW priorities. I mean, you know, one person over there would make a world of a difference. So we would love to be able to do all of those things, but it isn't possible right now. And, you know, and we'll have to make those decisions next year, though, going forward, is do we want to, you know, there are ways that we can help make those things possible, you know, but do we want to do it? And do the voters want to do it, and do you folks want to recommend it?
When we start the revenue, just, this is more informational, I think I know the answer. As far as the, sort of the tax base, not the other revenue, what the, sort of what we get from real estate taxes, you start with an assumption of the biggest increase that's allowed by the 2.5%.
2.5%.
Yeah. Okay. So there's no.
There's no-
There's no increasing that to balance the budget, and there's no, you know, if we decreased it, we'd have a bigger hole.
Yeah,
Yeah.
decreasing it would cause a bigger problem, for
Yeah.
sure. But yeah, we're at the top of, you know, where we can go,
And
barring an override.
Yeah, and even if you made it better somehow magically this year, the next year, you could still only you can't make it up the year after.
Right.
No.
No, unless we didn't, if we didn't raise to that full level, then we could make it up.
Oh, you can't.
By raising
Yeah.
to that, full, there's nothing, yeah. You can,
I don't think it's retroactive.
the ceiling,
I mean, the ceiling is always 2.5% of the value of the town, but you can't go, if you don't use the entire levy one year, you can't go back and charge it without an override.
Yeah.
It's sort of a moot question, but
yeah,
I,
because we're there.
yeah.
We haven't been in that position.
Yep. So I think it would probably be you've provided a good handout for us. I think it would probably be a good exercise both for us and for people listening if we went through the budget cut tracker to kind of, because people who have followed along to our meetings have heard that we had sort of started out at about 1.9 million gap between balanced to get to balanced. And we're talking about that we're pretty much there where we stand right now. So I think it'd be a good way to go through and people can understand how it is that we've been getting to that.
I think it's important to note, though, is that we've done it in, even though, again, which we don't like to do, we were using some one-time revenue. We've done this without we're not affecting services in any
Right.
way on school or town side.
Yeah.
No one's losing their position. Basically, when you see these cuts and when we talk about this, this is going from what everybody would have loved to have been able to provide for the town on both school, town side, to what we're actually able to provide and just
Exactly.
level it out. So when you say the reductions, many of them are just
reductions in what we were projecting the
Hoping to
budget to be, what we wanted to be able to do.
Can I ask a
Request.
basic question on this for the schools? How does moving the laptops and the instructional material to the capital plan save any money?
So.
Isn't it just one pool of money? from
So
the-
so the difference between it is, if we move it into the capital plan, we're using free cash, which comes from money that we had left
Left
over
over
after
from last
last
year.
year's budget, to pay for it, rather than using this coming year's money to pay for it.
Like the levy money.
Which
But
is
it's
something
still,
so
the
we're not-
pool of
it's-
money we have is still X amount, whether it be what's moving forward from last year or this next year's budget, correct?
So they are slightly different pools. So we don't, what we're doing with the curriculum and the laptops, we don't prefer to do because those are more, well, Scott prefers. to.
the laptops I kind of prefer
Yeah, the
to.
laptops, they're more yearly ongoing
The
costs.
recurring expenses that we should
Recurring
budget
expenses
for.
that we should be budgeting for, we should be spending out of the general budget, the general fund, to cover those, rather than saying this is a
One time.
maybe not necessarily one-time cost, because there are some things that, like, we pave roads more than once, but we pay it as we're doing that this time. And we might not need to do the same amount next time. We might not need to do it at all next time. We'll do it like the roof on the senior center, various things that we do out of the capital program that are, we need this now, but it's not we keep needing it over and over again.
Equipment, trucks.
And so we just talked about the levy, we have the levy, state aid, all of that goes into this is the money to spend for the budget for.
Recurring costs.
For the coming year. And then free cash is the,
Leftover
we
from last year.
were good stewards of last year's budget, we didn't spend all of it. Next year, we'll get that money back, it's kind of like a tax return almost. And spending that not in your monthly budget for your family, but spending that on something else outside of that.
Okay.
Make sense?
It does, it's just, I mean, it's
Yes.
just moving money.
It is,
It's just
it
a
is,
different bucket.
yes,
It's not really
but-
any saving of any money
Yeah.
overall to the town.
Yep.
Like, it should be in, like, the laptop should be in the budget, right? Going
Laptop should
forward.
be part of capital. Curriculum and materials, I would agree that probably should be part of the budget. I don't believe something like that kind of technology should be in the operating budget, because despite, what they're projecting, some of the equipment does last longer than they want and can be reused or recycled.
Roughly how many years do we got of them?
They have a plan, they told us about it.
4 and 4 or
years,
something?
And
5
then
to
they
7.
changed, everybody got a new one every,
Right.
and then they took what they had and tried to recycle, but,
Yeah.
And pass those ones down to the younger grades so that the ones
Yeah.
that stay at school and,
Yep.
options become less expensive, especially when you buy in bulk. They don't always have to have Chromebooks, they may.
Yeah, I don't
change to
think
tablets
that-
and-
Greg or Andrew were saying that we should have the exact same number in that line every year.
But they will put it
But-
in there every year, and you know they will.
But I do understand your point. It's kind of like the point with the police cruisers of this year we might need 2, next year we might need 3, but we might only need 2, and it depends on how they're doing and how we're
And we've
using
had
them and
years
stuff.
where.
We have had years where we didn't
So
have.
you get one.
and that
Or
becomes the soft spot.
COVID,
Like,
we didn't buy new cruisers
Instead of 2, we're
because
gonna
we
do
didn't
one.
have the money to buy new cruisers, so.
Yeah, and then the ability to do that with the laptops and say, well, like, I think you're gonna have to try and get away with just replacing half of them this year.
Yeah, so. So
But
that's,
that's a-
that's the argument for that.
That's, for every year we'll have the same argument.
Yep.
Is there, I always use this word, but, and I know there's no official word, is there a reserve? So we're using a lot of the free cash that will be sort of certified next week, we hope. We're using a lot of that already. So our free cash at the end of this year will be less than it was at the end of last year.
So free cash is,
I mean, free cash starting fiscal year '24, whatever. We're gonna have less money there, because I see lots of places where we're using free cash to pay for stuff. And more so than we did last year.
Well, we didn't, I don't think we had as much last year, or what just we're anticipating or hoping for this year, but again, without knowing, it's kind of
Yeah.
hard to say.
It's almost like we did the trade-off with, maybe we are ending up with a little bit more free cash, but we ended up with less money from the state. Whereas last year, we had more money from the state and a little bit less free cash.
and just to go
But-
back again, free cash is the money that's left over from last year's budget that we didn't spend. Or that we took
Or
in,
extra revenue.
we
beyond.
took in above projections for
Fiscal
revenue.
year '23.
Fiscal year '23, right. The free cash number next year will be current year, fiscal year '24's budget, what we bring in over revenue and spend less than what we projected, what we
Yeah.
passed in the budget. What we do or don't spend of the FY '23 free cash doesn't impact the FY '24 free cash, correct? And if we don't spend it, it could potentially increase, or is that just,
Right, so whatever we don't spend still stays as, our unreserved fund balance, which does flow year to year.
okay,
So it is.
Undesignated,
prudent.
is it undesignated?
Yes.
yeah,
So it's prudent to use it unless you need it.
yeah.
So what I'm trying to get to is, if we go with this budget the way it is, are we leaving ourselves in a situation where we're not going to be able to cover those things that we know are gonna happen in fiscal year '25 that aren't budgeted, that we're covering this year, because in fiscal year '23, we did have free cash. And fiscal year '24, we don't know.
Did we carry over any free cash from '23 to '24?
I think we carried over 900K-ish, I want to say.
Alright, so that's good. That helps. That's what I'm trying to get at,
Yeah.
is there some kind of reserve there that hasn't been
And-
spent?
We would like to
And-
not spend it all.
and
Right,
Chris,
no,
Don't
I
know what it
I
is,
know,
but I know, yeah.
just to add, we do have the town's reserve fund,
Yeah,
which needs to be voted from town meeting to take money out of the reserve fund,
The stabilization.
the stabilization fund.
Yeah.
So that's
And
still the
we,
rainy
and
day.
that is set
$3
aside, and we have
Alright,
about
good. That's the
3.2
kind of thing I
million.
was
We have about
trying to get at.
3.2 million in that we had been building that up. We put a lot of money in it when COVID hit and we were doing the budget, and because the state came back with, we're giving you last year's numbers for state aid when we thought it was gonna drop 10%, and so we had a lot of money at that point that we put to the side figuring we were gonna use it, and then all kinds of aid came from elsewhere that we didn't end up having to touch it. So we have a healthy balance in the stabilization fund that we hope to never have to use, but it's there in case we do have to.
So we've got money to cover when the snow goes over 100,000, which is what's in the budget. And it
Correct.
will. Someday we're gonna get snow again.
Even if we don't, we still always end up having to fill the
That's right.
salt shed.
But
Right.
it sounds like there's places we can go that, you know,
Worst case
there's
scenario.
some reserve there.
Yes.
All right, good.
Well, depending on how
Okay.
bad things crash
Yeah.
at some point in the future, we may
Yeah.
not have
Right.
enough to completely cover with that, but we certainly have some, so.
6 more years till 2030.
Yeah, right. We're almost there.
So, so did we want to go over the cut tracker, understanding that these were cuts from the projected budget, not actual cuts? So I think the first thing that most people can notice if they're looking at this document is that most of the lines on there say new request, and that is, first thing that we did was took out any requests for new, or most requests for new positions.
Yep.
Do
Yeah,
you want to go down over some of the other stuff?
well, I mean, you know, you can, if you want to just go down the list, I mean, you can see we had DPW requesting 2 laborers for highway and 2 laborers for recreation. And again, it's not, these weren't things that they just wanted for the sake of building up their departments, it's just,
We discussed them in meeting here. We know we would prefer to be able to give them those positions, but.
Then the stormwater, that is the annual MS4 plan that we do. It fluctuates. Some years it's higher than others, so we felt that we could, and I think we might have done it the first year, we paid for that in free cash. It is such a fluctuating number that I don't know that it makes sense for it to be an operating, just because it changes. We reduced the projections for fire department over time. We're hoping that, you know, that number holds. The health department, as you can see, they had requests for just some part-time workers to work down at the compost site. And again, this would be something that we probably will look to do in the future, as that we want to expand what we can do down there and what we can take in as far as recyclables and different things like that.
Didn't Health also have a request for a new position, part-time position for like trash inspection type services?
We hired somebody, we got, last year you funded a position in there.
Oh, that was last year?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
all right.
funded at last year's town meeting. I don't know that there was another one beyond that,
Yeah,
but
that was the
Okay.
person.
if
that
there
we-
was, we said no.
Okay.
That was the person that we thought we could use for town events to try and bring crowds in.
Yes, right. Let's see,
Or was it, wasn't there additional position for health this year? Was it a part-time nurse or something for they wanted the shots reimbursements, or? I don't know.
They just want
No.
part-timers at the compost site.
Yeah, all right. Maybe I'm making that up.
I know last year that that was the case, but I don't recall anything this year.
Hmm.
You know what, last year, there was some discussion at one point around, do we need a full-time nurse? Should it be a part-time? I think that might be,
Yeah,
maybe
okay.
that's what you're
Yeah.
thinking of.
Yeah.
But,
It wasn't last year. We brought the full-time,
But I think there was some discussion when we were going through the budget, where there was question about whether we needed a full-time nurse.
Oh,
Because we
okay.
hadn't previously had, or because we
Before
we used to
COVID, we
contract
didn't have
out,
it.
we contracted out
And
to
then we added it
the
with
social
COVID
VNA.
and kind of being out of COVID, the discussion of do we keep that? And I think it was an overwhelming,
Yeah,
it was an overwhelming yes.
right.
I know,
And
but
I don't think-
the more
I
he
don't-
says it, the
Clearly
more
saw
I
it was
think
something
it's.
that we-
I don't think it was us initiating the discussion of do we keep it. I think Lindsay brought up that there was a discussion about that.
Yeah, that somebody had had a question about it, whether, or, yeah, but.
Yeah, so we definitely did talk about that. I don't think we initiated that.
Yeah.
So, trash.
Trash, that was just a reduction in the budget thing, Andrew?
Yes, in the trash budget.
Let's see.
IT assistant that we discussed.
Yeah.
Veteran admin assistant.
Yeah, he wanted actually, so he does have currently one part-time, and he was hoping for another one, just to be offset in those.
Holbrook dispatch.
Yes, Holbrook Dispatch, again, that's one of the items that we're using free cash for this year, but we do have to build that into the budget next year, and it will be an increase, another increase beyond that. I don't have it in front of me. Probably goes up,
It doubles.
it doubles.
Yeah.
And then the cadet program, the police department had talked about. So there were 3 cadets that we removed. We were hoping, obviously, he was hoping to start that program. They would be people that would be more, very well-trained, but they would also be watching, they wouldn't be police officers, but they would be in the front lobby, helping with people who come in or answering the phones and stuff like that, but trained to be able to handle minor situations. DPW highway fuel, just a reduction in the expenses there. We haven't fully put in that health insurance rate adjustment, but you'll see that when we do finally balance this. The police education incentive adjustment, that was just a error. The police actually had it when we did the new contract over, they actually accounted for more than they actually had to. So that was a pleasant surprise that Andrew found. We were hoping to put a new position in the treasurer collector's office. There was quite a bit that goes on down there, if you can imagine, all the bills that go out at different times of the year. Everything flows through that department. All the departments who take in any money, all the money flows through that department. One of the biggest reasons that we had some holdups this year in certifying free cash was getting, just trying to get information finished up and into DLS through that department. So we really will kind of continue to look at doing what we can to streamline operations down there. Debt adjustment,
So when the treasurer's budget was presented, the debt schedule was not final, and she sat down with the bank to get an updated schedule, and it was,
Bank error not in our favor.
yeah.
no, that was not the pleasant surprise.
So what's happening there is that some of the recent borrowings, we're now hitting the principal payments for that in fiscal '25. So that's why it's increasing.
So then you see our health insurance that using the trust fund for the premium holiday. Again, that's a one-time thing. And then also using ARPA funds, which was through just revenue replacement that we were allowed to do to offset that cost also. Another one-time thing. Cherry sheet update.
So I just updated the revenues, just went through them just to make sure they matched, so we have a little bit of extra money there.
And then, I don't know, is that what, the next two line items, they're a blank?
Yeah, so those are just blanks. Those are the last ones on the town side. As far as the school side goes, those
Just
are
to
all,
separate.
yeah. Those are all ones that were discussed last week in their presentation.
So, and then, like we said, so then the further ones that you'll see when Andrew and I get sort of a few more final numbers in, and certainly early on, you'll have them well before town meeting. It's just the remainder of the adjustments on health insurance, the adjustment on another adjustment of the police department budget, and then we expect to see some adjustments on the school budget.
And I apologize because I missed the school's presentation, but for the circuit breaker, isn't that something you either need or you don't need?
So what that is they increased the amount of reimbursement that they're expecting. They believe that 75% is the max, and they were estimating that we'd be getting back less than 75%. But based on developments that they received, they feel comfortable estimating the full max reimbursement.
Oh, I thought it was for an actual circuit breaker, like electric structure in the
Oh, no.
building. Oh, okay, sorry.
The circuit breaker is it's a state reimbursement for special education.
Okay.
So when our special ed costs are over a certain threshold, we'll get a certain percentage back from the state.
And it changes from year to year. Sometimes they say they'll reimburse up to 75%. And in the beginning, it was like 75%. But then as they cut, as the state cuts the budget, you may get 68% or 69%. Sometimes you get less than that, it's kind of a moving target.
Okay.
What,
I think it'd be awesome if we were buying circuit breakers, by the way.
The 71,000?
Oh, I figured it was the new school, something went wrong, it's a big system.
That's a big breaker. It's one of those two-handed ones.
It's the one that Dr. Frankenstein
Right,
uses.
yeah.
Yeah.
You put on the gloves, the glasses.
we now know what positions have been taken out. What positions remain added this year? Are
No, there are no new positions
Okay.
on our end, on the town side, if I'm not mistaken.
And it says just a first and sixth grade teacher on the,
That's what they asked for, but I don't believe that they're going to have to eliminate those two new positions. I believe they're still able to
Yeah.
fund it. They've found other ways to fund it
Okay.
and
yeah, it says
offset it.
only
so.
grades 1 and 6 have new
Yeah.
teachers.
They, I think that they, in their, original requests, that I don't remember who, I think it was actually Dan, Eddie, and Paul who were the liaisons. But their original requests were, they did identify a lot more needs.
Yeah.
And certainly, they were justified to, the same extent that ours were on this side, so.
Yeah.
It just, unfortunately, it's just a tough year and we can't do it.
And we believe that brings us to balance.
Yes.
More or less.
So I mean,
More or less,
Maybe more.
because it's hard to vote on more or less.
Well,
I
So-
think you could probably vote it at town meeting.
so I was just gonna say, if, we can always,
Looking
we
at-
have a couple options, right? We can vote, assuming that, those numbers from free cash are gonna get us to balanced.
The numbers overall
Right.
that we've talked.
But that free cash number that we're waiting for kind of plugs into a lot of places. So we could vote,
We could vote assuming that it gets to balance between now and town meeting,
or we
which I'm
can,
not crazy about.
right, I'm just saying, these are the options, or we can
Question
wait
to the
until.
moderator. The finance committee needs to provide printed recommendations on each warrant article, correct?
Yes, and that's why I'm here today, to kind of get an update on what articles you have made a recommendation for. And to your, where you're leading is there are some articles that you don't have all the information because we haven't certified free cash yet. So what we've done in the past when that happens is we'd have some sort of statement in the warrant that we're gonna post on the website that says, Finance Committee has not yet made a recommendation, we're awaiting final information, or whatever the facts are. So we'll put out as much information as we can when we print. We're trying to get this up on the website as quickly as possible because the postcards already went out to residents saying, check the website. But I literally was updating the warrant, that's why I was late to the meeting, with some information that Andrew and Liz and everyone was sending to me. So if there are articles that you can't vote on yet because there's not definitive information, you don't feel comfortable, that's fine, we'll just say that, knowing that you're gonna make a definitive vote in motion at town meeting.
Yeah, within that statement, it would say a recommendation will be provided at
Yep.
town meeting.
Okay.
Which in the past, we have not ever recommended without solid,
I
specific
agree.
numbers.
I agree. I think to some of the points I've made about in our discussions about the charter in previous weeks, I think in
I wish
April.
we had another week.
April 1st town meeting, it makes it difficult because of just overall when we get the state numbers, some of which we don't even have yet, so.
Right. So either the bylaw can be revised to change the date, the annual date of town meeting, or the selectmen have the authority to move a town meeting also. We could open up town meeting on April 1st. I'm not saying this is gonna happen, it's not gonna happen. But you could open up a town meeting and take care of what you know, and then continue town meeting to a later date to finish after you receive the additional information from the state or wherever the source.
But that's also an additional expense to hold another town meeting.
Correct.
Years ago, 20, 30 years ago, those of you around long enough, we used to have a town meeting in the spring with the best numbers available, and then we'd routinely have a special town meeting in the fall to fine tune the budget numbers after the state's numbers had come in, like in late June or whatever. That was kind of a pain, and we've since got away from that, and the state's been better, but this year has been difficult.
We do expect, there will be a fall town meeting this year.
I always think we should have a fall town meeting, even though I know it's an expense, but I think
I
if
know.
you wait from April to April, that so many things happen, it's hard to keep people informed with just that
There are
once a
certain budgets
year.
that you have to vote and like the school budget has to be established in the spring. Because you can't take a town meeting vote in October and say, oh, we're gonna cut the school budget and lay off some teachers now. 'Cause
Yeah.
which class are you gonna go in there and tell them that closing it down?
Yeah.
Typically, though, it hasn't happened anytime
Typically,
recently that we
yeah.
haven't been able to have
This
a
is-
recommendation for the budget.
Right, this is the first year that I've been on that we haven't had free cash numbers at this point, and that we haven't had, that it's taken this long to get solid budget.
I have been on, where it has happened,
I-
it's just far and few
Sorry,
between.
this close to town meeting.
I've
Up
been on when.
Up until a couple of years ago, town meeting was late May.
Right, and that's what we
early
did. We
June-
pushed
early
it back
June
if
in
we
some
didn't
of
have the
years. We've always had very solid numbers by then. I think that when it was late May town meeting, we are ahead right now in mid-March to where we were in those years. We certainly have better numbers than we did.
And if I can speak, I saw one of your discussions in a previous meeting about why is town meeting the first Monday in April. I was on the bylaw review committee back when we made that revision, and one of the reasons we did it at that time was we were having a god-awful time getting a quorum in May and June, when the weather's nice and the soccer fields and Little League fields are full, and parents simply can't go to town meeting, they can't leave their kids, and so it's tough getting a quorum. And that was risky, because you have to finish your town meeting before June 30th, or at least set your budget by June 30th.
Yes.
So in looking at the calendars, the first Monday in April was after the winter sports season ended and was before the spring sports had started. It usually avoided Easter weekend. It avoided a lot of the major holidays. The only thing that we always had to worry was the NCAA finals. When was that? So that was the most convenient date that didn't interfere with most other things. But again, the selectmen could determine at any time really to say, for whatever reason, the information we have now, we're not gonna have it on first Monday in April. We're gonna push it to the first Monday in May, or a third. They can do a Saturday. They can do any day they want to. And that may be a discussion at a future bylaw review committee meeting. And there's been talk about reducing the quorum so that we know we can start the meeting on time and get the town's business done. A lot of the towns, editorially, I'll share, a lot of the towns that have gone to a 0 quorum have seen an increase in attendance, because people, 2 reasons. People think that a small group's gonna make the decision, so I'm gonna go there to make sure it doesn't happen, which creates a larger group. And the second thing is, everyone knows, if it says it's gonna start at 7 o'clock, it's gonna start at 7 o'clock. Whether there's 100 people there or 300 people there, we can start because the quorum is 0. So people have had a lot of efficiencies from that, and to my knowledge, any town that has gone to 0 quorum has never gone back to revise it elsewhere. We'll see what happens in the future. That's not on the warrant for this year to change the quorum.
Did you say you wanted to put it on in the fall, though?
I'm the
Where
town
we're at
moderator.
right now
I'm
tonight,
taking a position, I'm
Matt,
sharing
the
information.
remaining articles,
Yep.
it looks like,
So the remaining articles that we have not voted on, I can just quickly go over that. We have the snow and ice budget, which needs free cash, the budget, which needs final numbers,
And free cash.
the capital plan, which needs free cash, the accrued liabilities and compensated absence fund, which needs free cash, the unemployment reserve fund, which needs free cash, the matching grant fund, which needs free cash, and the Griffin's Dairy Well, which needs free cash.
my,
I thought you voted to pass
We did
that
not-
over.
We did not vote on that one.
All right.
I saw in the handout tonight that it said pass over on that. We did not vote to pass over the Griffin's Dairy Well project. We talked about whether or not that should go
Go to
back
CPC.
to CPC, and I think the overall sense was that we felt that that should probably go back to CPC, but we did not actually vote on that because
Vote on the closed fund deficits, the 3.
we did not know. Wait, no, hang on. Yes, we did vote on the closed fund deficits.
To approve that.
Yes. I can send you the list of everything we voted on. I have a document with it.
Can we vote on some of the ones that, even though they need free cash to fund them, can we say pending?
So one of the things that I was thinking was, the things that we absolutely need to, we know that whatever the free cash amount is, we will spend free cash on this for sure, like snow and ice. I think it's feasible for us to vote on those and provide recommendations on those. I think we should probably go through the various things and have an idea of which things we think fall into that category and which things don't necessarily fall into that category. And which things on the, like, have an idea before the night of town meeting, what the capital plan might end up looking like. So question I did have for Andrew was, we know that we don't have a final number on free cash still. Do we have a ballpark number on free cash? No.
but we could get a number on these articles.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, my question, like, a park number was more like, do we have like Yellowstone? Do we have like, we know it's going to be above like 400,000 or something like that.
I hope they.
And if the answer is no, we don't know, then just say no, we don't.
That's why I
hard to
think,
say.
yeah,
Okay.
I think it's a slippery slope
Yeah.
to do that,
No, I
because we
know,
just don't
but-
have, I get where you're going though,
Yeah.
totally understand.
If we're
'cause
saying
then now
like,
we gotta,
but if, for example, Andrew was saying, we don't know what the free cash number is, but we think that it's going to fall somewhere between 700,000 and 1 point something million. We could potentially go up toward 500,000 maybe, and say, we can do up through this much comfortably, knowing that there's a 90-something% chance that we're gonna be over that number. But if we don't know at all, then we take that off the table.
and Scott, I know that you don't have a crystal ball, but, you think you'll have that free cash number by town meeting?
If we don't, then we definitely will be postponing.
Okay, so in my opinion, that we should wait on, to vote these articles until our meeting before town meeting, when we have those numbers, unless you're able to get them sooner. I don't know what sooner would be, we got 1 week left, yeah. So the meeting before town meeting, basically, is
Would-
probably the best that we could,
Go ahead, sorry.
in my opinion, that's, we have to just hope that you have that number then, and you'd need that number anyways legally, right, to be able to plug in.
We need it, we need it for everything.
Yeah,
We can't spend money out of free cash
right.
without free
until
cash
we
being
have it.
certain.
And but we can't even vote on, you can't vote on it saying, I'm gonna use free cash, because you have to have an exact number when we walk into town meeting. So I would say that it would be better for us to,
And I will say though, that Andrew can probably speak to it better than I can. They are typically pretty good at turning things around quickly at DLS.
and we've had the conversations that we feel like, or you guys feel, like, these are things that you're going to be able to, you're anticipating being able to cover with free cash. So it shouldn't be a huge discussion at the meeting before town meeting, if we have the free cash number and it can be plugged in, right?
Yeah, I think what the discussion will be is, this is what free cash number is, and if anything, these are the recommendations that I think that we will not be able to do. Like I said, probably first things would come out of the capital, and we'll redline those and make the votes appropriately.
I guess logistically, what is the benefit that, like, these are based on estimates that Andrew compiled, that we think we're gonna be able to fund all these with free cash, so we either send out, well, we either don't give the voters any information about what, we anticipate our approvals on these, and we wait until the night of town meeting and then vote on everything, or we vote on it now, and if something goes wrong, then we can always amend it in the meeting before town meeting. Like, why not get ahead of it now, rather than leave everything open until 15 minutes before town meeting? We're still voting either way.
We can always reopen it if.
Exactly.
Yeah, if free
Comes in.
cash somehow comes in at 0, we can open things back up in the meeting before town meeting. So we could, I see your point, we could go either way. We could not provide recommendations not having the free cash number, or we could provide recommendation, not provide recommendations, and then reopen them at the meeting before town meeting to create our recommendation, or we could provide what our recommendations are pending that we have free cash and that free cash covers them, and then reopen the recommendations if free cash does not cover everything.
And if that's a situation of free cash isn't what our expectations are, then we're gonna be amending probably like one article, get rid of the front end loader or something like that, as opposed to these 6 or 7 articles that
I
we're all
think in the
waiting on.
past, too, though, it's been the, wanting to be responsible, not appear as though, for lack of a better term, that we're rubber stamping, like, okay, that money will come along, or we're supposed to have concrete numbers to say, we recommend this, knowing these numbers, knowing these figures, knowing these exact figures, I will recommend to the townspeople that this is a good thing.
I suppose it could be pending pending the certification of free cash.
But our whole budget's
we-
based on projections, what we think we're gonna get for revenue next
So-
year and excise taxes, and I mean, none of these are hard numbers, they're all just projections that Andrew puts forward, so what's the difference
Question.
between this and free cash?
Question to the moderator, can we have our recommendation say pending certification of free cash?
Yeah, because that's your recommendation. And I was going to kind of say what Andrew just said, that I think in fact, I think you've already voted the closed fund deficits for 3,600 and change,
Yeah,
which
I
is
was
free
gonna say,
cash.
there are a very very small ones that we have
St.
voted.
Patrick's Day, did you vote?
Yeah.
Did you vote the St.
Police
Patrick's
Department
Parade?
cameras.
Past
10,000?
year bills, police department cameras.
Mr. Chairman, did you,
What was that?
did you approve the $10,000 article for St. Patrick's Day Parade?
We did, yes.
All right, and that was free cash, I'm assuming. And then there was,
I think we had a question mark next to the source.
It
but
was- it is-
likely to be free cash.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
there's,
yeah.
you know, I mean, you guys can do what you want, but if you feel comfortable, you know, you could essentially approve or take a vote on all the articles with free cash, but treat the capital plan differently. As you said, that, you know,
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
Yeah,
contingent on the certification of sufficient free cash. Because I think you'd want to have a budget vote printed. Because I think if a warrant goes out with the finance committee saying, we're not really sure about the budget, you know, we haven't made up our mind yet, that gets a little scared whenever that can happen, or we'll make it completely clear what your vote is and why on the
I
budget.
like that contingent upon the certification of free cash.
Of sufficient free cash.
certification of sufficient free cash.
Certification, sort of.
keep that wording in mind for
Oh.
your motion.
I think you
That's why I'm
can,
writing it down.
and I don't, yeah. You can either add that clause to all of those articles that are free cash, or just, or you can probably take the small ones and not put that condition on it, because you know you're gonna have some amount of free cash, or you feel comfortable that way. And even if the worst-case scenario, like you said, you can have another meeting on April 1st
Right.
and revise some of your votes. A budget is an estimate. We'd like to have as
So-
much information as possible.
Do we need to first pull out the smaller ones, and to do
So,
approve or pass over, and then group together?
so I think the
Because we've
only
discussed them all now.
the only real big one is the capital plan. But it would probably be good to go over.
We gotta vote anyway.
Go over the numbers in the ones that are not the capital plan. So, snow and ice,
That would be 245K.
Because that is pending
That's in addition to the 100,000?
this weekend.
it's in
That's
addition.
245 over the 100,000?
Correct.
That is correct. And, yeah, again, you may revote it after this weekend.
Yeah, don't even.
Hopefully it stays warm.
Just saying.
then budget, capital.
Are you gonna vote that, a motion, is that?
Yeah.
I want to go through the numbers first, so that we understand what numbers we're looking at. Accrued liabilities and compensated absence fund.
It's
How much?
166.
Yeah, 166K. But if there's not enough free cash, to skip that one.
Yeah.
I would suggest we find something into it now.
Same for unemployment reserve. And then matching grant funds.
That would have been 50K, but that's a low priority. So, in the same boat, can't, if we don't have the free cash, it's okay to let that one go.
And Griffin's Dairy is 50,000. I think that's all of the articles that we haven't voted, so we have 15,000 we have voted for the prior year's bills, 70,000 we voted for the police cameras. What else was free cash?
Griffin's Dairy, weren't we considering putting that off until the fall so that that could come out of CPA funds?
I think it would be would it be next spring for CPA? But we
Yeah.
worked,
We've done stuff in the fall.
Yeah, I think, yeah, the CPA would just have to vote it, I guess, yeah. They
Yeah,
perhaps
so-
could schedule in the fall, but at worst, it would be the following spring,
Yeah.
But
if that's your,
if there's money there and they want to speak to it at town meeting, I think we
They
should-
certainly can
I
speak
think
to
we
it,
should let them.
so.
But
If,
What did we vote? Did we vote?
this.
We did not vote on that one
Oh,
yet.
okay.
Okay. So were we gonna?
It says on the handout
Mhm.
pass over, but we did not actually vote to pass over that one. We have not, we have not voted on that
that
one.
was my bad. I was trying to put all the information together.
jumping the gun.
So you looking for a motion on that?
Um,
Well, let's
Are you
go back to
waiting?
number one.
So I want to, and then capital,
The free cash part of capital,
yeah.
that's $1,007,059,476. I mean, again, that is still what we left in there was, what I added into that was a $750,000. Just not knowing, you know, we could throw that into road improvement projects. That would probably be the first thing that would come out of that, though. Or be reduced, maybe not come out altogether.
Which
So
are-
that's number 3 on B, in the funding of the capital plan. You know, normally, you know, something like that, again, we would have had our free cash number
Long ago.
long ago, and we would have edited this
Feel-
appropriately, so
feel
I'd
like
rather
we've
not
had-
take it out.
I feel like there have
What
been years
article?
where we've had it.
Oh, 5, oh, no, sorry,
Yeah, I
6.
think so. This, I know
Oh,
some,
okay.
This
Yeah, I
is
see it.
very late. I don't know, I think it was
We've
before
already
we
approved
were
it?
here, but I feel like there are years we've had free cash certified in the fall. I don't know what's-
dark hole next year.
This says we voted to approve the funding of the capital plan.
We did not.
Don't,
All right, so
you did.
245,000 for snow and ice removal. For the reserve funds, the unemployment and the compensated absence funds. You said those are things that we could skip. Scott said he'd like to put money in. them.
They're required by the newly adopted financial policies, but,
Self-required,
right, a higher standard for us.
yes. We would like to fund them, but if we don't know what our funds are,
Yeah, they certainly, we would probably not fund them if it came down to buying a truck or something that we absolutely need for DPW.
yeah.
We would forego this for a year, for sure.
But we have to pay it next year, but we wouldn't have a fund to pay it, because those things happen every year.
Pretty much, I mean, you can count on something coming up, sure.
Yes.
We could always
But
adjust
those
the
are,
amounts too.
those are things that we are paying.
Yeah, we typically
Just
take it out
paying
of a line
difference-
item transfer.
Paying out of a
or-
different
or-
source, usually
Yeah.
as a year-end transfer. So it's not like we're not paying them and haven't been paying.
No,
them,
but
so.
if the budget is so tight that then, that we can't afford to fund it ahead of time, when we know what's gonna happen,
And we want to account for it because
then
it's appropriate to do
we
so.
just fooled ourselves into spending money that we don't have.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just confirm, if you don't mind, did you already vote And is it true we're raising appropriating the money for annual funding of out-of-district students, health imperative funding, and the ARC of the South Shore?
Yes,
Those are all raised and appropriate, not free cash, okay?
yes. Actually, I think Scott said he wanted to borrow for all of this.
No.
So I have it listed that you've already approved 4 articles with free cash. Article 2, which is the payment of prior year's bills for $15,276.
Or,
Yep, 2, 3, I don't know, the old 2, 3,
Article,
4.
the police station camera
Camera
system, which is
system.
now Article 4 for 70.
yep,
And then close the fund deficits for $3,684 and change. And the fourth one that I have on my list is the St. Patrick's Day overtime funding for $10,000. I believe those 4 have already been voted by you. Then there's a few others that you're contemplating.
Yeah.
so yes, we've already used approximately 100,000 of free cash. Just a hair under that.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve funding of the snow and ice.
Article
to
1.
Article 1, current Article 1.
Yep.
Contingent on the certification of sufficient free cash.
There's a motion for Article 1, snow and ice costs. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Sarah. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Are we comfortable with approving this one? All right. All those in favor of recommending Article 1, contingent on the certification of significant free cash?
Aye.
All those opposed, abstaining, it is approved, recommended.
I'd like to make a
I'm
motion.
gonna take a second just to
Okay.
make sure I'm writing down in my notes these things appropriately. Sorry.
No problem.
All right. Back to you, Barbara.
I mean, if somebody want,
No,
I'm not
you just keep
comfortable,
going.
yeah, so just, if somebody else wants to, I'm not comfortable to recommend approval of the operating budget with a contingency, so I'm gonna skip over that. If somebody else wants to make a motion, feel free, but that's just how I feel about
I'll make a motion
it.
to approve the fiscal year 2025 operating budget.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second it so that we can vote.
There's a second discussion on voting recommendation of the budget without final numbers.
I mean, if there's gonna be any adjustments the night of town meeting, it's not gonna be to this, likely coming out of this article, it's gonna be to the other articles that we don't necessarily need to fund this year as opposed to our operating budget. which we
Operating
do.
budget, yeah,
Yeah.
will be balanced and.
But we don't even know what it is yet.
Yeah, I'm struggling to approve voting for a budget without a number.
We have like we have a worst case scenario?
What do you mean?
I don't know, is there a worst case scenario of how much?
Well, I mean, we have the operating budget number, it's,
No, but I mean like worst case scenario of what we will have for free cash, which,
no, we've,
like just worst case.
And not through, I mean,
So,
600 grand.
so
Scott,
just setting aside for a second.
Scott, I just wanna make,
Because I don't think that the free cash discussion is at the heart of where we're at with the budget. to
They
clarify.
have to make up 700K or
Because the
so,
budget,
which,
and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, we've made up the majority of that. It's just not necessarily all reflected, but the question, or the part that's questioning for me is when we have previously, in previous years, when we have been ready to vote on the budget, we have had a balance sheet that's like this balance sheet, that at the top we have, these are our revenues, these are our operating expenses, this is the cost for warrant articles, and it is balanced. And so we know we are voting on the total number of the expenses plus warrant articles, the operating expenses plus cost of warrant articles. And that's the number that we're voting on. Where we're at right now, there's some wiggle room as to balanced might be adding things into projected revenues, it might be taking things away from projected costs. And so I don't, or is that not where we're at? Are we at, we know what the projected revenues are going to be, and it's a question of which lines we're taking things out of to get expenses to where the costs need to be?
Yeah, you'll see the expenses, again, in healthcare will change, and then the expenses on school department will change. And I don't think there'll be any increases in revenue.
So right now on the general fund budget summary sheet that we have, the total revenues number is $67,482,034. Is what's left to happen essentially getting the expenses number to that number?
That makes sense, yeah.
So if we voted a budget of $67,482,034, knowing that what we're doing between now and town meeting, while we can get to that potentially get to it in a couple of different ways, it's decreasing the expenses to get to that number. But that's the number that we are getting to. Would that make people more comfortable in?
Your other option, theoretically, is we want to publish a recommendation now.
Right.
So there, on these remaining articles, we could have language in there that Finance Committee has not yet voted upon this as they're, pending the receipt of certified free cash. That's the information right now. If you wanted to schedule another meeting next Wednesday or Thursday and hope the free cash is in, and you spend a half an hour meeting and you kind of lock those in, we would update what's on the website and publish it, or wait till the 1st and you would announce it. Obviously, the sooner we can kind of present the budget out and distribute it, the better, but I hate giving you guys more and more meetings.
So a vote, like another meeting next week would impact so it would impact the website, but what is mailed out does not.
We're not mailing anything out?
Does not actually include our recommendations.
We only mail postcards out now,
Right.
and it says
So,
check the website.
And it's got the
Previous
little
years,
thing on
for those who remember, the entire warrant was mailed out.
At a sufficient
with-
expense.
With the recommendations printed on it.
And I have that drafted, and everything you voted in recommendations are ready for final review, which you'll be reviewing tomorrow.
Yep.
And so those remaining articles that you're discussing right now wouldn't have a final Finance Committee recommend, usually it says, Finance Committee recommends approval of this article, and to transfer X amount of dollars from free cash, and to borrow the $900,000 for this article. In this case, you wouldn't have a affirmative recommendation, it would be a statement, Finance Committee has not yet voted, because and Finance Committee will vote upon the receipt of certified free cash. You know, I'll put together some language that is proper. I'm trying to do it on the cuff and I'm failing. And if you have the ability to get certified free cash and have a meeting whenever that day is, we'll update the warrant and republish an update at the website. And if it just happens to get delayed even further, you'll be doing it April on, you know, your 6 o'clock meeting before the 7 o'clock town meeting. Worst case scenario, to Greg's question, is if the state, for whatever reason, can't certify free cash and just doesn't get back to us, God forbid, we would open town meeting, we would announce, we can't do a lot of the dollar amount articles, but there are certain articles we can do tonight, and we'd like to do them tonight. The zoning articles, the ones that don't involve the allocation of money. Get these done, and we're gonna declare that we're gonna recess and come back for the second session of town meeting at X date, whether it's a week or 2 or 3 later.
Thank you, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And that has happened in the past, where we've done just that.
Other years, we've delayed town meeting.
The entire
Pushed
meeting.
it back, the entire meeting, because we don't get those numbers in time. Through no fault of Scott's, or, you know, it's not like Scott's,
I want the numbers.
Yes.
right,
Yep.
you're not holding up the numbers.
Right.
This is, you know, no one here in town's fault. You know, everything that's supposed to be done is being done. We just aren't getting the numbers from the state.
Yeah, our goal is to just try to distribute as much information, accurate information as possible to the voters so they're aware. And, you know, and we would notify people if we came to the realization we can't vote the budget and some of the dollar amount numbers, we'll let people know that, you know, please come April 1st, we still gotta do it. And we'll take care, you know, knock as much stuff off the warrant as we can on Monday night, the 1st of April, and then return and do the remaining money articles. Need a quorum of 150 people to do anything. But if the ducks get lined up and you get your free cash, then we're ready to go. April 1st, we'll get it all done.
I mean, we gotta ban nips, so that's gonna,
Well, between that and the trash article, I'm pretty sure that you're gonna have a good.
The discussion's gonna be
There will
anyway.
be a good
Nobody ever
turnout.
talks about budget. Which is crazy, but that's the way it is.
So, to continue the discussion on the motion for the budget. Trying to figure out where people are at for voting right now.
Well, you wanna try taking a vote?
Are we ready to take a vote? Do we have more questions, more things to discuss on the budget?
So to go back to your point from earlier, Matt, so you're saying we could recommend a dollar amount budget with the commitment that we're gonna get there
So
for town meeting?
typically, the article for the budget says, the town votes to approve a budget of, and it gives the dollar amount, and it says, as laid out in the handout, in the spreadsheet.
It'll give you a line-by-line breakdown.
Gives you a
and the
line-by-line breakdown.
Motion
Some
gives
of
you
my-
a list of revenue sources.
Right, some of my hesitancy for voting on this as we sit here was not having that dollar amount, not knowing if we were expecting revenue to bump up, expenses to come down, but I do think knowing that we do have an expected dollar amount and that we are expecting it to be expenses that are coming down to get to that amount to be balanced, and that we can always take it up on the 1st if things change or in between. And I will say, to Sean's point about a potential meeting next week, I am away in Florida all week next week. So that would be difficult for me, but not impossible, but difficult.
All right, so I will move, did you already make a motion?
We already have a
No,
motion.
you already
Yes,
have a
we do
motion,
have a motion.
But you didn't say an amount.
I did not, so I'd be happy to amend my motion to we're looking at amend the motion to approve the budget to the town, or to, what is it, the 482
That's the one, yeah.
034?
Yep.
I'll second that.
But does that, is that what it's,
So
because
I
that doesn't
think-
anticipate the warrant articles that are gonna be, oh, all right, so this is just, never mind, that's the budget, okay, yeah. It's coming out of revenue, yes, that's
So I think it
fine.
was Barbara that had seconded. Do we need to retract the first motion to amend the motion?
I think you'd be okay.
Just do it. Okay. I'm being told by the town
He
moderator to
can,
just do
he's
it.
gonna withdraw his motion, or gonna clarify your motion. Your motion
Clarifying the
is
motion.
to approve the budget article with a total budget amount of $67,482,034. The question is whether you wanna add any language about contingent on the certification of sufficient free cash, or just leave it alone.
Or do we want to say contingent upon the balancing of expenses? That
Because
way-
that's not necessarily gonna be the number, so when you make a
So
motion
I
with
think,
that
I think what
number,
we're saying is that is the number.
That
That's
is the
what's-
number.
That's what Scott is saying, is that is the number.
Yeah, and the underlying question is, do the members of the finance committee feel comfortable even approving the total budget number, but not knowing exactly how it's broken down in the line?
Not knowing the last few areas that we are decreasing the
Right.
expenses to get to
right,
that.
and I don't, so.
What if we
I
did
get-
just approximately that amount? And you could always adjust it with maybe some revenue looks like it's gonna increase by some
I think-
amount, expenses.
I think Scott was pretty certain saying that it's not gonna be revenue.
Yeah, I don't expect the
increases. It
revenue, I
would
think
be-
it's those expenses that we identified earlier that would be reduced. But I don't believe,
So what we'll do is we'll cut the expenses to match the revenues, but then also add in the motions where we're gonna be using free cash to plug into the budget.
Right, so you're still using free cash to plug into those numbers in certain areas. So it's just not, in my opinion, there's no harm in waiting until,
So, sorry, go ahead.
the meeting before town meeting to make a recommendation when we know, when everything's very crystal clear. Again, not through the fault of anyone here.
So-
There's only so much that
Right.
can be done if you're not getting those numbers.
So maybe I missed it earlier in the meeting, but where are we using free cash in the operating budget?
Well, so, we can go back to the cut tracker. So we'll be using it for stormwater, over dispatch.
I thought those items were moving to the capital plan, the way that we moved the curriculum and the laptops. So I think that was where my disconnect was. Because, for example, we took, with the school budget,
Oh, I see what you're
the
saying.
laptops and the curriculum, we took out of the school budget. We changed the school budget's number, we put those in the number for the capital plan.
Yeah, we could stick those numbers in here instead of doing it separately. I see what you're saying.
so instead of, there won't be any free cash used, the balance will.
It'll just come out of here.
Because conceptually, I don't like using free cash to balance the
Well,
I
operating
hear you.
budget.
Well,
If we need to use funds to balance the budget, I believe that's typically stabilization, which we don't want to do. But if we're essentially moving things to use different sources of income to be able to get to that point, and it's specific things that have variable factors to them.
If we do it that way, then the budget article won't have any free cash in it. It's.
I don't know
all
about
capital
anybody
plan.
else, but that would be preferential to me.
What was it?
Not having free cash in the budget itself. It would be taking items out of the budget and putting them into the capital plan and paying for them with the capital plan. Like we already discussed, the laptops and the curriculum for the school, but it's the other things that we had highlighted, the stormwater. and
Holbrook Dispatch.
the dispatch.
I think it's important to be consistent, and we've done that with the laptops last year and again this year.
Yeah.
And I also would feel a lot more comfortable seeing it broken out and moved into the capital plan with the other free cash items. It will help us next year too,
Yeah.
when we're budgeting, to look at how far we had to trim down to meet our revenue, balance with our revenue.
Andrew?
So what is the actual motion that we have before us, though? I guess it's my amended motion to say
So I think
that
it
the
is,
exact
I
dollar amount.
think we are,
which-
we're still discussing your amended motion. I think what we're talking about
But-
is,
Andrew's gonna remove any items in the budget that are currently funded by free cash and move them into the capital plan so that we can vote on the budget, but that's not gonna take place tonight anyways?
or the free cash discussion is not, the capital plan is not taking place tonight.
But now the budget
Right.
won't take place
Adjustments.
though, because he has to make those adjustments.
Well, the budget number's the same that you.
Right.
That's not changing. There were a couple of items that when you do the motion includes where all the money comes from,
Mhm.
and it would have picked out free cash, which we don't know yet. What we're saying is that won't be part of the operating, and that won't be part of the motion, that will be part of free cash, part of capital.
But I think to Andrew's point, the 67,482,000 will now drop, because
Does
you're
that
pulling
drop?
those, you're taking those out of the operating budget and moving them
No,
to capital?
it would drop the number below that, the 68,147,521, because there are expenses that we're taking out to move into the capital plan, not revenue.
Okay.
So those would bring it
Make sense?
Does it? As
closer.
long as Andrew's okay, I'm okay.
Does it
Yeah.
bring it all the way to balanced, or does it bring it closer to balanced?
That just brings it close.
Okay.
I mean, it's gonna be the other.
The health insurance
The health
number,
insurance.
and what was the other?
Police vacancies and
The
then
police vacancies.
the first grade and sixth grade teacher.
That was already on the list.
Not on the cut track.
Oh, was it?
So they're still currently in.
Okay. So they're still in, but school is moving monies to cover those,
I think they've.
so that the cost of those positions will be taken out of the proposed number by the schools.
So, everything that's going to be, what's in the operating expenses on this sheet right now are cut on,
No, those are already cut out of the operating expenses on the cut sheet.
these have already been cut out of here.
Those are not, that's the
Oh,
one.
sorry. Where's the cut
Right
sheet?
here. Nope, you just had it.
I had it.
That one. So that's been cut out.
This been cut from here.
No,
Not all of it has been cut out of there, so
No.
there's some items that are not cut out of there.
The total, the remaining deficit on the cut sheet is 689, 644, which matches the current deficit on the summary page.
Right.
So
after taking all those out.
Right, yes.
Right.
And then, so additional cuts need to be made in the amount of 689,644 to
Correct.
get to a balanced budget. And where are those cuts coming from?
So that was health,
Yep.
2 school positions that are actually going to be added to the school budget, but they're adding them and cutting other areas. We don't know what the other areas are.
And
And then
police officer,
the
coming out of
Police, in the unfilled police salary positions.
I mean, there are just so many questions that, like, we could take a vote, and then if people vote no, we're gonna end up meeting an hour before this meeting, before town meeting anyway, and
Yes.
we can all change our mind.
But then the
I mean, this
website
isn't-
for the next 2 weeks is gonna say, we voted no on the budget, so then
Right,
everyone's gonna be
yeah,
like,
the
what's going on?
recommendation.
Well, no,
That's why
No, but
I-
you can reference your no, right? You can say, like, I'm voting no because I have a dinosaur brain, and half of this stuff, I don't even understand it anymore, just because we don't know what we're taking from here. It's not your fault, it's just, it is what it is. So like,
Just
how can
where
you
we're
vote,
at
like,
in
if
the
you
process.
needed to go buy a car right now, and they were like, well, we think your car payment's gonna be $600, but we don't know.
Right,
Well,
so
Would
you're
you
not
sign-
gonna
would you sign-
recommend to
would you
me to
sign the
do that,
paperwork?
right?
I don't think you'd sign the paperwork. I think you'd say, hey, let's wait and see if it's 500 or 700, or maybe they come back with 900, or I don't know, something.
I think this is more like, you're gonna buy a car for X amount of money, but you're either gonna have, you know, this radio pack, this audio package, or this, you know what I mean? It's still gonna be the cars there, it's just, what are the details that's gonna be associated with it, so.
What we do know is, we're gonna take in projected revenues of $67,482,034. That's all we're gonna spend in our operating budget.
I'm still more comfortable to, that's just my,
And at this
Stance on
point,
it.
the difference between
What's up there.
what's up there, 689,000, that I've identified how we're going to take care of that.
right.
So, I mean, if you want to hold off, that's fine until you clean up the sheet, put it in front of you. But that's essentially it. We're not going to, the revenue is not going to increase. It just isn't. And so we have to drop the expenses to meet the revenue, and that's how we're gonna do it. So I get it if you're not comfortable, you know, we'll have it cleaned up and with a zero surplus and a sheet that explains how everything's getting funded, but the free cash portion of it is all going to be in capital, so it won't be used in this end.
I would like to amend, can I amend?
The amendment? Why don't we just start with the whole new?
So ready?
Withdraw that motion?
I'll
Andrew
withdraw my
withdraws
second.
the
I
motion,
think
the
if
second
we-
is
I-
withdrawn.
Yeah.
Can I ask then too, Scott and Andrew, based on what the town manager just said, you have your revenue number. And to Andrew's point, he'd like to kind of vote a revenue number so the town knows that this is our number. And then Scott and Andrew feel comfortable that they could essentially print a budget in that amount without free cash as part of it, so that we could perhaps post a copy of that budget in the next few days, and we can put a note right on it, to be ratified by the finance committee. And it's something like you'll eventually like to see and vote approval of it, how it's broken down.
And that's what I want to say, is the 67,482 pending, contingent on final details being presented that the expenses match that number, using the accounts that we've discussed at this meeting.
Anybody
For
else?
simplicity.
I get what he's saying, so like
Yes.
I
identifying,
understand it, yeah.
right, identifying health and,
Yeah, I don't want the details, I don't want to tie your hands, but
Right.
I don't want you to
So
be able to
as I had said at one
Cut
point
the file.
earlier, essentially
and
saying
half the.
approving a budget of 67 million XXX, I
Yeah.
don't remember what, I know it ends with 34, but I don't remember what the middle part is.
Yeah.
Approving a budget of that amount contingent upon expenses being brought into balance, or some
There you
wording,
go.
some
Yeah,
wording
some
to
wording
that
to that
effect.
did somebody record that?
Yeah.
Chris did in his mind.
And is that your motion?
It doesn't have to be Andrew's motion. Andrew withdrew
Oh, I'm
his
sorry,
motion.
he
It could be,
withdrew.
it could be anyone's motion, if that's the motion that we want to make at this time.
I can vote for that motion.
Okay, I will second that motion.
What was the actual
The
motion?
motion was that we will recommend to approve the budget of 67,482,
I knew this was gonna be tough.
034,
Provided that operating
provided that the
expenses
operating expense detail supports that number,
not exceed that number.
not exceed that number.
So there is a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. Yeah, I'll second for the purposes of discussion.
Barbara?
Let's just say this gets approved tonight. We will then get more information the night, before the,
We'll update this tomorrow.
We'll update
Okay.
it and provide us the additional
We'll give
information, the
you
cleaning
Okay.
up of the
That
numbers.
new,
all right,
with
Okay.
all the budget
okay,
tomorrow, and then as soon as we know more information, we'll get it to you.
okay.
But we can do that tomorrow, right?
All right, I'm good.
So basically, the big thing we need to hold off on is a capital plan? Or at least that would be contingent upon.
That'll
other-
definitely be
Certification of free
contingent,
cash.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's in it will definitely be impacted by what the free cash number is.
And I'll
So-
update that with the new, with the items that we had talked about. I'll put those in, update that plan before we print it.
So to use Greg's words, we've gone through a lot of mental gymnastics at this point over where we're at with the motion, but we do have a motion. Before we vote on this motion, I want to make sure that people are ready to vote and are comfortable with where they're at. Whether it's a yes or a no doesn't matter to me. But I want to make sure that your questions are all answered before we actually vote on it, because I don't want anyone to feel rushed. So I am going to go person by person and start with Marty. Marty's ready.
I'm ready.
Sarah's ready. Andrew ready. Chris, you're ready. Barbara. Greg's ready.
Super ready.
I'm ready. So without any further discussion, all those in favor of the motion to recommend the budget contingent upon expenses coming in line to balance it, and we know further information is coming, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? It is recommended. Thank you very much. I know that was a lot of work. And I appreciate all of the work and all of the discussion that everybody put in for that. It was definitely, again, using Greg's term, mental gymnastics, and my brain hurts. But
Yeah,
I
ditto.
think we got ourselves to where we needed to get to for that discussion. And thanks to Andrew and Scott and to Sean. There's been a lot of effort put into this, including just during the meeting, the stuff that we're throwing, telling you to move to capital and stuff like that. So definitely appreciated the flexibility and all of the work getting to that. It's a lot of work to get a budget approved by March 20th, so.
So you still have the capital plan and a few others.
So we have
Two.
not yet voted, let me go back to my list.
Did we vote to approve the capital plan?
We did not, it was listed on the handout tonight as approved, but that was one of two things that was incorrect. I'll go back to my document, hang on. So, budget. Budget is recommended, so capital is not yet voted on. The accrued liabilities and compensation absence fund, the unemployment reserve fund, the matching grant fund, and the Griffin's Dairy well are the only things that we have not voted on at this point,
Everything except the Griffin's Dairy well is coming from free cash.
including the Griffin's Dairy
Oh,
well is
including
coming
is
from
different, is coming
free
from
cash
free cash.
as it stands right now. Griffin's Dairy on the handout said pass over. I think that was because we, in previous meetings, had made clear our preference that it be passed over and go back to
CPA.
CPA. As the moderator said, that could potentially happen for a fall town meeting.
It depends on what the CPC, the
Yes.
Community Preservation Committee
CPC.
wanted to do.
Yep, so,
Which one do we have left vote on?
so we have
It's the capital plan.
capital plan,
liabilities, So it's 21, 22.
21, 22, 24, and 27.
Can we come back to the capital plan on the meeting before town?
We absolutely have to come back to the capital plan.
Not
It is
26,
before
but
town.
27, right? Griffin's Dairy.
27.
Yes, 27 Griffin's Dairy.
So let's do 21.
So 21 and 22, Andrew has said we could skip. them this year. 24, Andrew's comment was that's a low priority, which I think also means could be skipped this year. And 27, in past meetings, we seemed to think that that should be passed over to go to.
So what about for 6, 21, 22, 24? We just indicate that the finance committee is reserving a vote on these articles pending the certification of free cash.
So my question is, for everything but the capital, do we want to just wait, or do we want to put up there where we feel we're at with them right now? Like 27, the Griffin's Dairy one, I could be wrong on this, and please feel free to contradict me on this, but it did feel like everybody wanted that to go back to community preservation, so I think we could act on that one to say that.
Isn't that where we are, though?
No,
With the
because we have
Passover?
not actually taken action.
That's not nobody.
We didn't actually vote on that
Oh, okay.
yet. It says on the handout, pass over, but we didn't actually pass over.
Motion to recommend passing over Article
27.
27, Griffin's Dairy Farm Well Project, with the intent to,
Send it back to the Community Preservation Committee.
Request appropriations from the community preservation.
With the
Request-
suggestion that they
with the
seek
suggestion,
funding
thank you,
from
the
Community
suggestion that they
Preservation
seek
Committee.
CPA funding.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Oh, there's a second and a third on that one. Any further discussion on that one? on
Already need to
27?
vote.
All those in favor of passing over Article 27?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? It is recommended to pass over.
Now, just so everyone understands, if by the time town meeting comes in, free cash comes in at a level that's sufficient, that there was free cash available for the 50,000, someone in the audience could stand up and make a motion to approve it.
Absolutely.
And do that.
Could make a motion in the positive.
Yeah, and then it's up to the
if
town to
money is
say,
available.
we think the finance committee's suggestion is a better move, or let's pay for it now with free cash.
Yep,
Or one of us could do it on April 1st.
correct.
Aye.
Does anyone specifically want to take action on 21, 22, or 24? The three different funds for absence, unemployment, and grant matching, not knowing if we'll have the free cash to pay for those.
No.
I would suggest
I think we should do
you take a motion to print the recommendation to be something like, certified free cash was not available as of March 20th. The Finance Committee will take a vote on this article when that information comes available, and will announce it at town meeting.
Or
So-
recommendation, vote to be taken.
what he said.
Yes.
That's what we would
So
print.
moved, yeah.
And then,
I would-
at your meeting on April 1st, if you have all the information, you could take a
Right.
vote.
I would put the capital article in that same wording. That we will take up
Marty
the.
just,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
motioned
Yeah.
to, and I will second that.
Yep. So Articles 6, 21, 22, and 24 are moved to follow the recommendation
Say something clever.
of Marty via Sean Ryan. And seconded by Barbara. Any discussion on the motion? Without any, all those in favor of recommending that motion?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, it is recommended. And those are recommendations on each of the 29 warrant articles.
It's really not a lot of articles.
It's not, it's often,
Feel-
we're often up in like the
feel awful.
40s. So, it's not your fault, there's usually a lot more zoning stuff.
Try to be efficient, more efficient every year. So I'm going to work to update the warrant with the votes you just took tonight and previously. I'm gonna send a copy out to your chairman, to the town manager, to Andrew, to take a look at.
Well, do you want to adjust the capital plan?
Yeah, that's gonna have to be adjusted pursuant to, we can talk about it after.
Send it to you then? That's all I would add on to these different lines.
Sure,
And I'll do it and give it to you.
you're the best. Actually, you know what?
You know I'm gonna screw up the format.
Well-
That's why I asked you.
Let's talk after this meeting. Maybe I'll do all my updates tonight, because I'm not gonna be able to sleep until I do this. And then you can plug in that remaining information tomorrow morning, and then,
And send it back to you to fix the formatting.
correct, right.
It is, that is like a terrible chart.
Yeah, I'm gonna replace it with an Excel spreadsheet. It's gonna be. Can I just confirm to the Finance Committee, or through the Finance Committee, Article 7, which is the purchase and equipment of the new fire engine, and Article 8, which is the fuel island for the town, those are a $900,000 and a $1.2 million borrowing articles, both of them. And I know you voted to approve, but I had written, and you recommended approval and to borrow the 900,000 and to borrow the 1.2, right? Okay. There isn't, just again, so you're aware, the warrant we're gonna post will have the Finance Committee's recommendation in it. The selectmen are meeting on Monday, the 25th, and I believe it's the intention of the selectmen to also take votes on every article as to whether they support or not to get into detail that you guys do. And they want me to update yet another edition of the warrant to add their vote, the 4-0 vote, 3-1, whatever it is. And that would be available right after their meeting, and that would be distributed at town meeting. So at town meeting, the goal is to have a warrant, which is currently 16 pages, the budget handout, the charter review handout, which I'm working on with the charter review committee, and I think attached to this warrant will be one sheet showing where the Linwood Street parcel is, a map so people can visualize where it is, and the other attachment was going to be the map showing where the multifamily district is for the MBTA, so people know where that is. Other than that, we're almost done. Yes. April 1st.
And leave it as you walk out.
Yeah, please arrive early so you can check in and get a seat. As soon as we have 150, we can get started.
We should get some.
That will cost us.
I'll see if the health department's interested.
I did talk to the chairman of the Board of Health today. He might be talking to you, Matt, to give you some information or answer any questions. It's my understanding both the article to ban NIPS and the stable fee inspection article are going to continue to be on the warrant. And there's a little bit of something in there for everyone to take a look at.
Are you allowing presentations on the NIP and
Presentations, no. I mean, there's nothing, we don't need a, so the PowerPoint, on the large screen, we usually post the wording of the article, if we can fit it, the motion, and we only use that really for the town's presentation, not for personal presentations, because that's just a slippery slope we can't do. But anyone, any resident can speak to support or object to an article. Non-residents are not allowed to speak unless you're, an employee of the town, or superintendent of schools can speak, or if town meeting allows a non-resident to speak by vote, or by edict of the moderator, which I usually leave it to town meeting to decide.
I can only remember one vote.
What's that?
I can only remember one vote.
Was it a
in
couple
the
years ago, right?
Yeah, in the years that I've been going.
One of the marijuana
Yeah.
For example, for Union Point or the air base, I did allow the consultants because we wanted to get the information out on the table, so then the townspeople could ask questions.
fellow from Central Street?
Was it voted on
To
that
let him
person
speak.
to let him speak?
Yep.
Okay.
But I think what you're asking is, can a business owner that doesn't live in Abington talk about the NIP ban, pro or con?
Well, I know there's a group of them that
My
may,
answer to that is, I cannot allow them because they're not residents. If town meeting wants to vote to allow that, they could. But the flip side of that is, I think there's enough residents in town that can express the pro and the con argument that you might not need an out-of-town person to take to the microphone. But it's a legislative body, so we see what the residents who vote want to do.
do you have a hard cutoff at like midnight?
We've been very successful at getting everything done in one night.
Yep.
Again, I credit the voters who go because they watch these meetings and they hear all of your debates and glean a lot of information. Again, some of the more detailed articles like the MBTA zoning, I would encourage people to go to the town website, abingtonma.gov, click on the planning board page, and then there's another click to the MBTA communities, and there's a video there you can watch, and the map you can look at. I don't know if Paul's showing it on the screen, but it's on the big screen right now, that's here in this room. That conversation about MBTA communities in Abington was produced by Abington CAM. It's very informative. It can, so we'll all have kind of a working knowledge of the zoning issues. Abington's in a little bit better, in my opinion, not as moderator, a little bit better position than some of the other towns because, as the town planner mentioned earlier, we already had basically commuter rail-based zoning in place. And what the state's now requiring, we've been doing already for 20 years, they're tweaking it to make one permit, basically take that permit away, that level, but all the other requirements still are in place. So I want to thank all you people here. For the people at home, I'll keep saying it, everyone on the Finance Committee is a volunteer, and it is a lot of time, a lot of work, but it's, I think people at home appreciate it because they get a lot out of listening to you guys. So thank you for your time.
Since you're looking for other members, you should add in like a lot of fun.
A lot of fun, yeah.
It is, I mean, it's,
Good company.
if you're interested in municipal government, how it works, and we do have one vacancy.
Yes.
To your point.
We do.
And I haven't appointed anyone because we're we're right in the depths of the budget where it's, it's hard to
It'd be
kind of
very
jump in.
difficult to jump in.
But we are looking for people who'd like to volunteer. If they would, they can contact me. Come to town meeting and contact me, that's the best way. We'll talk after town meeting. Or you can always leave your name at the town manager's office and your contact information, I can reach out to you. No
That was
prior
literally
experience.
how I ended up on it, was at town meeting, they announced there was a vacancy, and I followed up at town meeting with Sean.
And how many years you been on it now?
10 or 11, something like that. Barbara's been on longer than I have.
How long have you been, Barbara?
Long time.
Since she was 4.
Or so.
But we appreciate it, because it's good to have the historical base, but then they get the new ideas, the new thoughts.
Yep.
And I think you guys do an excellent job of asking the question every year that people at home are yelling at their television screen. That, want to explain why, again, we have to do it this way, or why we can't do it that way. It's very helpful. So we appreciate it, and you keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
And I did share with you the document I have with our votes.
You're the best. So I'm going to go home now and start tweaking the
All right,
the warrant for about
continuing
the-
our agenda, letting
13,000.
Sean leave and continuing our agenda, review of available meeting minutes. We
Motion to
we
approve the
have
meeting minutes of March 6,
Motion.
2024.
Barbara is ready to go. Motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the meeting minutes that were expertly prepared by our board secretary, Kelly? They were very good minutes.
It was what, the
Really detailed, informative.
6th and the,
I think they're just right.
Everyone was here, so everyone is able to
for
vote.
both?
The 6th was the
This
only one.
just
that we
the
got.
only-
yeah,
Just
just the
this week.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes
Aye.
of March
Aye.
6th? Opposed, abstaining, the minutes are approved. Any liaison reports?
No.
No liaison reports, there was no correspondence. Our next meeting will be at 6 o'clock at the high school in a room to be numbered later. 1 hour prior to town meeting, and again, it is open to the public, you can come and watch us do our debates over the capital plan and the spending of free cash. If we
1 hour
have,
gonna be enough time?
if we have free cash, 1 hour might not be enough time, but we hope that 1 hour will.
If we
will be
don't have
enough
free
time.
cash, the hour won't be necessary,
Right.
because we'll all be going into,
Very, very correct. But that is when our next meeting is.
because I think we've discussed, everything.
Yeah.
As,
I think-
we've gone over everything, we've
We've
gone over every article, so.
priorities within the capital plan. We've added things to the capital plan. We've also have the handful of articles, the 3 other articles that we talked about that we made in Marty's motion, so we do have a lot to discuss at that meeting, more than we normally do.
But unless things are vastly different than what you are, than what we've discussed, I think it's gonna be.
Most years, that meeting is taken up with discussing if we have closed out labor contracts that have been negotiating. We don't have that this year, so that frees up some time.
I don't think that'll be coming back for a couple of years.
Yeah, so.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, is there a second? There is. Any discussion? Without any, all those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we are adjourned. Thank you all so much.